happening. I remember Tech Mahindra for their strategy role literally asked me that Shatakshi, your people, and I quote, I don't know why or how they're better than IIM Bangalore folks. Of course, I know that how and why they're better than IIM Bangalore folks because
what kind of observations have you had around the learner who you feel taken a lot and excelled in GGI programs? And what do you think sets them apart?
I think my answer with is not just going to be limited to GGI. It's going to be expanding towards just success that I've seen in people, in fact, in certain shape or format, and myself, yourself as well. I think accountability. We are living in shittiest times with the multiple fragmented wars broken, trade wars happening, AI taking jobs, what's happening with Epstein Island scandals, so on and so forth.
Do you think AI will reduce entry-level opportunities or create new ones in governance and research spaces?
The entry-level jobs are already getting eradicated in private sector. Zuckerberg mentioned this, the first 2 or 3 level of many a times you can get a feel, oh, I'm a 30 mark or whatnot, right? And you have to constantly, and I think if you will not do it, life will have its own means and format of telling you you are fucking nobody, for the lack of better word. But that
Hey, hi Satakshi, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Vidhi. Great to have a chat with you. How are you doing?
All good, all good. Thank you so much for asking. And I think I'll just quickly set the tone for the chat today. In today's discussion, we will be focusing on two things. The first section of the discussion will focus on why GGI. It'll be a little bit of deep dive into why GGI. And then secondly, we'll be moving on to, as most of the young professionals pressing questions today, really to navigate around careers across strategy, policy, and governance. So let us quickly begin.
Before you start, do you want to also introduce yourself?
Sure, sure. So I am Vidhi. I have been working for 4 years now in the public policy space, public policy and implementation, primarily around public health, education, women empowerment, and climate change. I have been academically trained in history followed by a degree in development studies. My work has given me spaces to explore design thinking and behavioral science as well. So here, I think I would love to call myself a in-depth qualitative researcher as well.
Lovely. Glad
Sure.
to have you. And of course, you're a former GJI alum as well.
A proud GGI alum, I would say. Yeah. So let us begin, Satakshi. So I think, how about you shed a little bit light on what gap did you see in India's career and policy education ecosystem that led you to start Global Governance Initiative?
So the gaps are evolving in nature, but I can share the initial gap that we saw in 2019. I was a young advisor with Government of India, and I remember being in meeting rooms, even solving topics with issues around women and child development, where fortunately, I was the only woman occupying seat on the table. The joint secretary to additional secretary to secretary of women and child development, at least back then, all male, right? That's not to say males can't solve females' problem, but there is a huge angle of empathy. When you solve public policy, you have to keep people at the center of your policies, and you will be able to keep them when you will have enough representation around them. And then, of course, there was lack of youth as well. When you talk of India, when you make public policy of India, the majority of the population is young and youth, right? So there was a huge gap in terms of representation of women and youth in public policy. And then I later on went to ISB with a Harvard Exchange. So we started an international alternative to public policy program. And then I went to ISB with a Harvard Exchange, and I saw how homogenous the entire ecosystem looked, right? People with extremely high GMAT scores, sharp left brain, people who could afford fees worth 40 to 50 lakhs at ISB and 2 CR at HPS, right? And I felt like a lot of my talented friends were left behind, who were sharing shoulders with me when I was in Government of India, but they couldn't enter MBA primarily because they couldn't either crack left-brained examination or they couldn't afford fees. That's when we started an alternative to an MBA program. And of course, the mission is evolving, but those were the primary two gaps that I just saw people around me having, not enough representation of people in certain shape or format who were privileged. And I'm very mindful of the privileges that I've had. Maybe it's the famous middle class privilege, but it is a privilege. Not everyone has it, right? And I wanted to give back. And that's why eventually, of course, it tapered down to the market failures happening in universities as well. I think it has become now finally a mainstream narrative that universities are failing in terms of curriculum. But I think if I were to not even talk about curriculum, if I were to talk of literally practical outcomes, getting you a job, they were not most of the top universities, and I'm talking of IITs, LSR, St. Stephen's, IIMs, right? None of the university will prepare you how to make a CV. None of them will actually help you how to crack a case interview or an interview. So there were so many gaps both on the demand side, in the employment side, in the supply university side, that we felt like that we have to create a centralized platform that bridges all of these gaps. And now, of course, in 2026, we see that there are even higher gaps in politics, right? If the politics is much more well represented, there will not be so much angst that the people, at least, which are showing on social media as well. So it's always evolving. But the starting one was certainly a lack of good representation in universities, in governments, and failure by the universities to provide the bare minimum. I'm talking about literally the bare. So that's the gap that because of which we started Global Governance Initiative and continue to.
Right. And I think while you were sharing your answer, I was completely resonating with the points where I was a fellow back then while I was continuing my master's, and how my fellowship program completely helped me to land up in a good role post the fellowship. Moving on to the next, Satakshi. So then it's been almost like 5+ years now since Global Governance Initiative was started. So I would really like to understand what are the three key initiatives that got introduced in the past 5 years at GGI that makes it unique as an institution, keeping in mind the evolving times today.
On it. To correct, it's been 6+ years, but I understand that. I mean, there have been so many innovations. Innovation is at the heart of Global Governance Initiative because if we don't innovate, I fear we will become like the traditional universities, which are already existing. But if I were to pinpoint three, the number one, of course, will be around the PGP programs, having that conscious decision to provide a postgraduate program in two sectors. One is the strategy, leadership, and management domain, which is the MBA route. And the second one is public policy, governance, and leadership route. And we consciously decided to do it because, once again, coming from the understanding that not everyone has the funds to go to Howard Kennedy School or Georgetown, right? So that conscious decision was really required that we are going to be starting to provide PGP programs in both of these domains, keeping the market failures that we had in our mind. We are not in the certificate minting business. People have to generate jobs, like the way you said. The true yardstick of success of any education institution, especially GGI, is did you get your dream job by the end of your journey or within 3 to 4 months of your journey, right? So that's
Right.
number one. Number two, there are so many. I would say, and it was a very tough decision, Vidhi, to be honest, at my end, was to start Office of Career Services, and you've been part of Office of Career Services. Having studied abroad, especially in having exposure to Ivy League institutions like HBS and Howard Kennedy, I saw how different the pedigree and the mindset was in India. Everyone is just so accustomed to the university to provide the job, right? And I felt that people were having much more responsibility and accountability abroad for their own careers. They were not like that the IM will help me get a job and ISB will help me get a job. But eventually, I think the competitive pressures in the entire ecosystem in which GGI is, and I think rightfully so, we decided to start Office of Career Services. And thanks to the efforts by you, Darshita, Param, and everyone who's been part of Office of Career Services, we have more than 115 plus employment partners, and a lot of employers keep coming back and hire GGI fellows and scholars because of the kind of pedigree we provide, especially the training. I remember Tech Mahindra, for their strategy role, literally asked me that, Satakshi, your people, and I quote, I don't know why or how they're better than IIM Bangalore folks. Of course, I know that how and why they're better than IIM Bangalore folks, because I mean, I'm going to pass a judgment on the selection process of IIMs. You're looking at just a examination, you're giving seat to the people, you are training on obsolete models. Of course, people who are going to be selected better and trained on updated models are going to generate better results. So that's the second, I would say, most important and successful division and change, because there was a clear conundrum. Would we start becoming like IIMs if we start providing a placement opportunity? With the good in the heart, there was a thought like that, but we realized that if we have to help students, we have to make them accountable and responsible. At the same time, we have to be accountable and responsible ourselves to provide that support to students in as realistic format as possible. The third one, there have been just so many successes, but if I were to still point out, I think this is something that we did in the late 2025, which was the campus fellowship program. So GJ started with a huge focus on campuses. We started with Hindu College, went to IIFT, went to ISB, IIT Bombay, St. Stephen's, etc. But because of the good faith and goodwill we were getting on B2C or platforms, right? Slowly and steadily, I personally started feeling like we started distancing or got distanced from our students, the undergrads who were like literally struggling, which was also another story, that people even at the best of colleges like IIT and St. Stephen's are not trained enough how to get a job. So we have had executive program and whatnot, but if I were to very consciously choose the third update and launch, it has to be the campus fellowship program at the right affordability for those students, for the right people. And this is not just for people who are from LSR or St. Stephen's of the world, but even from tier 2 students who want to venture into the world of public policy, who are flirting with the idea of UPSC, but are not sure. And maybe they want to enter the world of public policy and then realize if UPSC is for me or not. But I'm kind of very proud because I have a lot of affinity to be in touch with current students, right? Of course, all of you are students, but when you're in your student age, your ability to be a rebel, your ability to think a lot, you have a lot of time without pressure, right? To think. And campus fellowship allows me to be in touch with students. So, for example, we recently collaborated with IIM Bangalore folks. We are in US collaborating with Georgetown and certain West Coast universities as well, and of course in India as well. But to synthesize, yes, those are the three: the PGP program, an intentional decision to move towards PGP model. Second is the Office of Career Services, and the third one is being in touch with the current undergrad and postgrad students through campus fellowship.
Sure. No, I completely concur about your point where you mentioned about there is a complete perfect balance of being a provider and a taker. So, like, not spoon feeding, but at the same time providing that safe ecosystem and enabling ecosystem to help young professionals really grow and figure out, and of course, to maintain the accountability level from both the ends. So I am assuming, like you mentioned, you really like to get in touch with students, and you get a lot of like inspiration flows both ways. So then, since you have been interacting to a lot of GGIMs through GGI programs, what kind of observations have you had around the learners who you feel have taken a lot and excelled in GGI programs, and what do you think sets them apart?
I think my answer with is not just going to be limited to GGI, is going to be expanding towards just success that I've seen in people, in fact, in certain shape or format, and myself, yourself as well. I think accountability. Just having that complete ownership that I and only I am responsible for my life, my career, is a huge differentiator between people who go out there and achieve success versus people who have a tad bit of complaining mindset, right? Even at ISB, the kind of people who are doing well from my cohort were extremely high on accountability in classrooms, be it their placements, and even the kind of people that I meet in the entrepreneurial networks that I'm part of. They're just hugely accountable. And that's what I very commonly see in GGI. People who will show up in my office hours are already navigating to find their next public policy job and are kind of getting stuck. And I can clearly see a distinction between someone who is having full ownership over action versus someone who is just talking the talk but not walking the walk, right? So someone who can walk the talk, someone who knows that I need help. Of course, you can take help, but help is help, right? They're not going to solve my problems. I have to goddamn solve my problems. That accountability is a very underrated, but I think a huge differentiator for just generally for people who have a success mindset.
Many young professionals today feel overwhelmed by too many career options available to go for. In your opinion, how do you think they should narrow their focus onto, okay, this is something that really will work out for me?
Yeah, I think I am the right person and not the right person for this. The reason why I say this because I have flirted with a lot of different options, and I think our generation is finally accepting that it is absolutely okay to spend 2 years in an industry and figure out if this is for you or not, right? Contrary to our parents' generation who actually spent 35 years in just one corporation. So I can maybe talk about how I figured out my focus area. I think the only way you can figure out your focus area is by jumping into it, right? Now, internships could be the model. Ecosystems like GJ could be the model where you have impact investing masterclass on one weekend and product management masterclass on another weekend. But of course, that's still a simulation kind of setup. It's still not a real setup. I have figured out my focus areas by literally spending 2 years in e-commerce, 2 years in consulting, and then did consulting again, and then did 2 years of public policy, then 1 year of international affairs. You realize over a period of time what excites you, like too much money, that reward excites you, and good and kudos to people who do that, right? Or just waking up at the start of the day knowing that the day is going to be hard, but your work is going to be meaningful for people, right? Excited me. When GJ happened, I just very quickly realized that teaching comes naturally to me. And of course, as an instructor also, I realize how my craft has been smoothened over the years because I've been doing this since 7 years, right? Now, people may come and compliment me on my good articulation skills, but I know the kind of continuous effort I have put because I realized kind of that this is my ikigai. So, as far as focus is concerned, in my 20s, I would not want to hunt for focus areas. Careers are going to be till your 60s, right? In fact, till date, I keep on finding new things that excite me. But you do start realizing what excites you by the time you start reaching your early 30s. So if you're in your 20s, I would not even, if you find something that this excites me, of course, stay there. But if you're trying to find your focus and you're sure you have not found it, keep at it. You will find something. And maybe you'll find something and move away from it in few years as well, right? I love being an instructor. Education as a sector comes very naturally to me. Interacting with people comes naturally to me, but that's not to say that's my complete identity and I will do it throughout my life, right? Having that understanding that nothing is fixed, right? It's always an evolving journey is how I think careers of 21st century are also formulated. They're not like our parental generation where, for example, my father was in one job or in one government office for 35 years. I can't imagine that. But back then, the options were also very less.
Correct. This is really helpful, Satakshi, because I guess being experimental, figuring it out, exploring through hands-on experience is something that one should really look up to. But at the same time, there are certain skill sets that are required to actually excel in certain fields. So my next question to you would be, what skills are now considered non-negotiable for someone who is aspiring and have figured out and want to venture into either of the fields, which is consulting, governance, policy, or development sector fields?
Correct. There are two sides or two categories to the answer. One are hard skills, second are soft skills. Let's quickly talk about the hard skills, right?
Sure.
Problem solving, which is that you pick up a problem, no matter how abstract it is, you break it down into its individual pieces, you investigate the root cause of the problem, come up with a recommendation. That's one. Second is analysis, being comfortable with numbers. Because of the three roles you mentioned, product management, management consulting, and public policy, you will be dealing with numbers. I know a lot of people, especially non-engineers and even women, are a little less comfortable with numbers, and that's our just conditioning and the kind of ecosystems we were exposed to, nothing to do with the gender here.
Right.
But it's a muscle, right? If you will analyze numbers once, twice, thrice, by the time you'll reach 10th time, you'll be better off, 100 time even better off, 1000 time even much more better off. So second will be data analysis. The third one, of course, I would say communication. The three roles, you are talking to the client. If you cannot answer briefly, if you cannot answer to the point, if you're speaking what you wanted to speak, and it has nothing or barely anything related to the question, which is something that we cover at GG and Management Communication Masterclass so much. You're dealing with C-suite people. In government, you're dealing with secretaries, political figures. They don't have a lot of time to deal with your gibberish, unfortunately, right? So having that, I'm not talking about the art and science of speaking in English. Very different than management communication, where you know that can I speak in 3 brief points and give a very specific update to the other person.
Right.
The fourth one is an advanced one, which is artificial intelligence. A lot of BCG consultants are also using artificial intelligence, updated artificial intelligence, much more than just ChatGPT, platforms like Notions, etc., to be able to do analysis, do due diligence on the analysis, make AI agents from AI. So AI agent is, for example, today, if I want to go to, let's say, Goa, right? I need my tickets, I need my accommodation, I need my local transportation figured out. In today's day and age, what I will do is I will go to 3 platforms and figure this out. But an AI agent will be like, if I want to go to Goa, figure out everything out end to end, right? That's an AI agent. A management consultant and a public policy should be comfortable to understand how those AI agents are built, not from coding point of view, but from the systemic structured thinking point of view, and should also be able to use them and adapt to them as well. I think the fourth one is just so important, which is ethicality. And morality is such a goody topic that a lot of people want to talk about morality and ethicality, but if you will notice someone's actions, you'll realize most of the people are not. But I genuinely believe, Vidhi, if our generation or the subsequent generation will not call a spade, we are living in shittiest times with the multiple fragmented wars broken, trade wars happening, AI taking jobs, what's happening with Epstein Island scandal, so on and so forth. Our generation has the luxury and the privilege also, because we are not in surviving times, unlike our parents. Our parents were literally surviving.
Right.
We are in thriving times. Now, I'm not saying that your morality will be same as my morality, but stepping down and questioning what is my North Star value. What do I really care about? What are the lines at which I will put my foot down and say this is non-tolerable? I will not accept this, right? And by the way, it goes both in personal and professional. People think that things are always compartmentalized. Never. Your values are actually singular. You have, honestly, in any one person's life, there are just 2-3 core values, and you have to spend time finding those core values where you will literally put your foot down and say, this is not acceptable to me. And it reflects both in your professional and personal life. But I genuinely think that the next generation leaders are not going to be the ones, unfortunately, where people like Bill Gates are now getting caught in their own scandal, where you can't whitewash your PR, right? People will be able to see through things in the world of social media. There is more whistleblowing happening. There is more sharing of knowledge happening. Of course, with that, there is a burden of misinformation that also comes there. But the future leaders are going to be those who are going to walk the talk. And they will be very careful and we are all collectively responsible for it. You, me, entire GJ community, and even listening to it. What are your core values, and can you stand strong on those values? Those are few skills I can think of. Of course, there are more quantitative and hard skills like marketing, finance, etc. that I'm assuming people will know. You need to know basics and a little bit of all of these so that you are at least bare minimum complete in things, right? Then comes the soft skills. I think in soft skills, there are just two. Number one is adaptability. And in fact, I'll just share my own struggle in the first 3 to 4 months of BCG. I'm someone who's very comfortable with Excel. In fact, before my MBA, I was like this Excel queen on most of the projects, be it in consulting or in strategy roles. But when I went to BCG, the data level was just so huge, Vidhi. A lot of my managers were asking me to deal with Tableau. And the kind of work that you have, right? And finding time, I know Tableau now sounds like so simplistic, right? But when you're under pressure, you're dealing with the client, you're trying to deliver and you're trying to learn, right? Eventually I did. But back then I felt like really hard work getting done at my end, right? So I get when people have a lot of huge responsibility, even at family and professionally, but the person who's going to succeed today in the career is going to be someone who is hugely adaptable, especially to technologies, right? There is a fixed mindset that we have, especially around technology, that like my generation people are in love with Excel, right? We had a little hard time moving beyond Excel. Like, how can Excel fail us, right? But the reality is we will be 45, 55, 65. The technology, if our parents can use smartphones and laptop, then we have to be adaptable throughout. The second one, I think, is curiosity, which is little innate, right? I think it is just so innate. The only way you can pick up curiosity, I think, is by being around curious people. That's the second best way. Otherwise, I think it's just so hard. But success is a lot about just being curious. Hey, what are you up to? Not in a negative, manipulative manner, but with a childlike curiosity in your heart manner. I want to learn this, right? Hey, how are you solving this cool VLOOKUP function? Can I learn this as well, right? So having that childlike joy and learning, I think it humbles you down also at every stage in your life, right? Many a times you can get a feel, oh, I'm a Tismar Khan and whatnot, right? And you have to constantly, and I think if you will not do it, life will have its own means and format of telling you you are fucking nobody, for the lack of better word. But that humility and curiosity, I think, go hand in glove. You can't be curious and not humble. You can't be humble and not curious. So those are the skills, both hard and soft, that I can think of.
Wow, I was just taking notes, and I think two things that really stuck with me was being adaptive, of course, and second one, careful usage of AI. I was just taking notes of the words that you spoke while you talked about AI, because the since you also mentioned the thriving times that we are living in, the advent of AI is both helpful and scary at the same time, especially to young professionals who are working hard out there, preparing for placements and also navigating their careers. What, in your opinion, do you think AI will reduce entry level opportunities or create new ones in governance and research spaces?
I mean, AI is a boon and a curse like any other technology, right? Boon for the reasons that we know, right? So, for example, I tell all of my GJ fellows and scholars now that here are the 5 golden rules of making a great CV. Now, rather than implementing these 5 rules directly yourself, you can upload your CV to ChatGPT, tell it or inform it that these are the 5 golden rules. Can you incorporate it, and keep on iterating? Now, a great boon, right? The same thing could become a curse. I think people like me are also guilty of it. We're outsourcing too much to AI,
Right.
which can, I mean, I look at my parents so sharp till date. My father would do mental math so quickly. And it's not just about a flex that he can do mental math quickly. It's about that he's still capable of problem solving, right? In his 60s.
Right.
And we would all want to be capable of, and problem solving is not just related to money or career, it's also about life, right?
Correct.
To a toddler, a problem statement is how can I go from point A to point B? Like literally a toddler of age 3. That's problem solving. When you reach 60s and 70s, maybe you start problem solving at that bare minimum level, right? Now, if we will outsource too much, right? The other day I was giving this example, I had to find the valuation of a venture, right? And if I were to go back to my MBA days 7-8 years ago, I would literally pick up my Excel, do a financial evaluation step by step and find the answer. And ChatGPT literally gave the answer to me in 2 minutes. It's another thing that there were errors in the answer. I was able to catch them because I knew the method. But I felt like my brain, if it will not work at that level of sharpness, it will catch on to rust, right? So, and another example is, I was reading this the other day that a lot of people are using AI as therapy as well. And which is a little scary part, because at least the ChatGPT of today, if I were to just take that example, is a lot of confirmation bias. It will only agree with you. It will never disagree with you, which is little scary if you are, let's say, having depressive thoughts. You are on the other end of the spectrum as well. So those are the cons. To answer your question, so we have to be first and foremost be very careful. Anyone who has realized the benefits of a sharp mind or keeping your mind sharp will never ever outsource everything to ChatGPT or otherwise. They know that this is important skill to have, right? The second answer to your question, yes, in consulting and in a lot of careers, it will happen little slowly in public policy because the adaptability is slow because of the huge machinery. The entry level jobs are already getting eradicated in private sector. Zuckerberg mentioned this, the first 2 or 3 level of tech engineers, whatever work they were doing can be done by AI right now. Even at GGI, a lot of work that we were doing with respect to customer service, student service, is now the first line of defense is now an artificial intelligence agent, which is tailor made, right? Not a human anymore. So yes, the bare minimum tasks will be done by machine, which have already been done, but it's now able to handle more complicated nature of things, which is actually also good news, because the existing people will do more complementary and rewarding tasks. People only push their limit when the time comes, right? So if you want a job, you will have to push yourself. But I think the only challenge here could be that are there going to be less jobs, which is already happening in the world of technology. You look at Amazon, Microsoft, TCS, etc., right? In tech world, the jobs are already reducing. I've kind of already answered your question, public policy. I think what will happen to public policy is not a direct elimination of the job of the employees, but employees will be working for government's services to deploy AI. So, for example, let's say you're working in Government of India and there is Nareka or any other scheme through which you have to transfer funds. And there is a possibility in one of the stages to deploy AI. So people will not be eliminated. Jobs will not go very quickly in government, but those same people will have to be adapt how to deploy AI for faster and efficient ecosystems for government services as well.
Right. And like this was beautifully answered, Satakshi. So then this brings me to a follow-up question. We talked about how jobs will evolve. Either they will reduce or then evolve, or it will take some time depending on the sectors that the sectors and the usage of AI. This brings me to this follow-up that then which, according to you, would be new career tracks that would emerge in global governance and public policy that students should be really ready to explore?
I think first and foremost, 2 things will happen, are already happening actually. Number 1, positions that require you to deal with your heart, with your emotions, and also having sharp communication will stay, right? Because communication is never black or white. Imagine AI firing people, right? There is a level of emotion you need to be able to understand that the other party may feel this news as personal, right? And that's why better.com or so many companies have come into light how harshly they let go of people. Few things should always be done in a human manner. That's why the future of careers in public policy, global governance will always be when you will deal with your heart, right? Because we're seeing that a lot of, which is, you can counter argue it that Shatakshi, we see a lot of jobs that are getting taken away are more artistic in nature, writing, etc. But still a skill, right? The machine cannot replace a hug. The machine cannot replace the way Shatakshi looks at Vidhi or Vidhi looks at Shatakshi, right? Making someone feel seen, safe, creating a safe ecosystem so that even humans thrive. If all the humans, imagine 100 people in a room working in paranoia, right? Nobody feeling good about that energy. So having leaders in such roles is going to be important. The second segment is the tech policy and the AI policy. So for example, I was talking to Bhumika, who is one of the GJ fellow. I'm not sure if you know her. She joined a tech policy role after Global Governance Initiative. In fact, is doing her master's in AI tech policy in Georgetown as well. And governments are in such a beautiful niche space. Governments are realizing that they need people who are technocrats and they want to combine it with the public policy world, which is also actually a focus area, GJ, the tech policy world. But that's going to be another big hit. That change has already happened in the world of businesses. Businesses have technocrats, but I think the governments are becoming much more sensitive now, especially with the mass scale adaptability of AI.
Right. No, completely agree on the fact that how different sectors would witness it. And then uh, moving on, I think we talked how to navigate careers, different sectors, the thriving, the both AI being a boon or a bane. I think when you talked about machine can never replace a heart, how about we move on to really the ends or the pillars of support where mentorship really comes in as a very strong pillar of support. So I think what are your thoughts around building a very strong mentor network as one progresses in their journey? And what would you suggest? Like, how can one continue to build it?
Sure. So if I get the question right, you're basically saying, how can we build a mentor network
Correct.
individually in our lives
Correct.
and continue to flourish? I think it's a great question. Truth be told, there comes a time, especially in solopreneur like me, where you can also get plateaued with your mentor access. But I always say that you can't get a mentor. The mentor selects you, right? And by the time it will become a mentor-mentee relationship, it will just become a label. It had already been happening as a mentor-mentee relationship, right? I genuinely think that the best way to find a mentor is in your workplace, right? Where someone who is a boss or a boss's boss, someone who is maybe laterally senior to you but not your direct boss, is the best way to start getting guidance how to navigate the system, right? So, for
Right.
example, all my peers or people who have supervised me in my career trajectory till now, in certain shape or format, they have been guiding me till now as well. In fact, personally, if I were to be very transparent, there is another problem that you can face. There comes a beautiful point where the mentee may get saturated with the knowledge of a mentor because you know what the mentor is going to say next.
Right.
Until or unless the mentor is overgrowing at your own speed, right? So it's the speed of the growth, right? The mentor is here, you are here, right? The mentor is growing, but what if you start growing at this pace, right?
Right.
That's not to say that hierarchically you are above them. That's to say that your growth of learning overpass them. And now when you want to talk to them, it's on a human level, but you feel like I can second guess what this person is saying until or unless the other person is also growing at a extremely rapid rate, and then you feel like okay, there is still delta in terms of what I can take from this person, right? Truth be told, I am at a phase in life where I feel like I need someone who has a faster pace of mental, emotional, career, and financial growth than me. I think I still am blessed with one, two people. And that's, I think, the interesting journey. At certain age in your life, you realize that you are your own mentor. And I think it's also very beautiful strength that you get that I have to just figure out myself. Because I mean, if I were to be, let's say, very peculiar about my journey, my bosses or my supervisors have not entered into entrepreneurship. So after a point of time, they will have limited value to give me when it comes to entrepreneurship, right? Until unless someone was an entrepreneur himself, then, and if they are growing, then there is a mutual synergy in the topics that we can discuss, right? But even in that case, there does come a time, I think, where you feel like you're not actively hunting for a mentor. Maybe you're hunting for a group where you can share the same values, emotions, and camaraderie. So, I think in mid 30s, I feel this way, but the feeling could change as well. It's a very empowering feeling to be. You're like, I'll figure out. I just know I'll figure out, right? And it doesn't have arrogance to it. There's a difference. There's a self-confidence to it that I know I'll figure out, kind of that.
Right. And I think my only addition to this would be while I was reflecting on how I have found, you know, good mentors within the peer ecosystem as well. Like really good friends from GGI ecosystem or at work have also been truly inspirational and, you know, providing me with the guidance whenever I need. So yeah, completely agree on that. This brings me to my last question for today's discussion, Shatakshi, which is what is that one harsh truth about career building that nobody tells young professionals?
That there is no one right answer to figuring it out.
Wow, I think I completely resonated. Being
Yeah.
hands-on, being adaptive, the words
We're,
that you mentioned,
we're just
completely
so
agree.
consumed in copying others. And I myself say that never ever copy my journey, my situations, my financial structure, whatever. And I think intrinsically, for example, I'm very risk taking. It may not be who you are, right?
Right.
The biggest disservice we can do to ourselves in our lives is not being who we are. They say that nature doesn't ever generate two same trees. Nature doesn't generate ever two same leopards. Nature will doesn't generate two same vidhis and shatakshi. Vidhis vidhi, shatakshi shatakshi. So you can get inspired, but there is no one right way only. Anyone who's saying there is just one only right way, they have some incentives to gain, or maybe they're not self-aware enough. But truth be told, I think there is no one right way. You figure out your own right.
Sure. Thank you so much. With this, we have concluded today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Vidhi. Always a pleasure, and I'm just so proud and emotional to do this chat with you, given you have been so long associated with GGI. I think you were part of the COVID
Correct. The
cohort.
first, second batches of TJ, and I just feel like, you know, the space that has given me so much. I really find my opportunity to really get back, or, you know, give back in the best possible way. Being in Mumbai, hosting alumni events there, being in Delhi, hosting it here. So yeah, like that way, you just like continue to meet new folks and understand what is happening. And like you said, curiosity is what really drives me.
I'm so glad, and it's because of fellows and alums like you. We are who we are. You know this, the culture of kindness is just so strongly, once again, walked, not just talked in GGI,
Right.
which I think makes all of us feel safe and seen in a world where there is a dog eat dog culture. But thank you so much for giving back, and I really enjoyed this chat. Cheers.